Hold up, I'm thirsty. Hey guys, what's up? So today I thought it might be interesting if I told you guys about my experience with the media and dealing with the media in terms of responding to a disaster. So just in case you're not aware, right now there have been a lot of controversy in the media as to the media. There's been a lot of fake news. There's been a lot of people accusing other people of staging things, CNN, and there has been a lot of debate about how the media has handled the hurricanes that just hit Texas and Florida. So when I was in college, I trained in whitewater rescue, I trained in high angle rope rescue, I trained in survival, I trained as an EMT. I actually worked as an EMT intermediate, and I also participated on an international rescue and response team. I was actually one of the leaders of the team. So when Hurricane Sandy was headed for New Jersey and New York, my team was invited to respond to the disaster. Now, up until this point, I hadn't really had much experience with the media. The only experience I really had was pretty positive. I was involved in a lot of musical stuff, like choirs and orchestras and stuff like that when I was in high school and grade school and middle school and all that stuff. So we had vocals at one point that were on a commercial, and we had local reporters asking, questions about performances and stuff like that. But it was never a big deal. It was always very nice, and it was pieces that were very promotional and very complimentary to what we were doing. It was great. But during the response to Sandy, there was a lot of really crazy things that happened with the media. So first and foremost, they hounded us. From the second they found out we were leaving, we were getting hounded. We had to get up in the middle of the night to respond to this. We basically had 2 hours to go get everything we needed, and we were leaving. And it was the middle of the night. And so we went to Target, and we got what we needed, and then we got in a van and we drove off. And trying to get in the van, the number of reporters around the van, there were reporters with lights, cameras in your faces, microphones. It was like being a celebrity, and I would hate that. It was just all there in front of you, and we were using our pillows, we were using our bags to try to just block the haters out. There was no dabbing them haters. Even once we got in the car and started leaving, we started getting phone calls. We were getting phone calls from our director telling us hey, we have all these requests for interviews. I'm going to be arranging them, figure out who's going to be answering the interviews. And I was woken up really early in the morning, 6 a.m. to do an interview with a radio host. I was just woken up and a phone was shoved in my face, and they're like, it's your turn, you got to answer this questions live on air. And let me tell you guys, I'd never been on the radio before answering questions live on air, especially about something like this. It was so nerve-wracking. The guy was so nice, and that was great. He was really super nice. But he was just asking all these questions that I didn't really have answers to. They were questions about what is inspiring you to respond, and what, and clearly it was, well, my training is in this, and this is what I practice for, and I'm going to respond. But you can't say that. You have to be oh, I'm really compassionate towards people, and I am, but there's just appropriate answers and not appropriate answers, you know what I mean? There's not I love adrenaline, and so I've trained in this because I love adrenaline, and I'm also compassionate about people, but mainly I love adrenaline, which is not true. I do love people. I am compassionate towards people. I love the fact that I trained in stuff and I could help people. But most people who train in those things, look at firefighters if you don't believe me, they're in it for the thrill, first and foremost. That's what attracts them to it. And then saving people's stuff is the icing on the cake, you know what I mean? Mostly we do training. We don't often get to use our skills this large scale. So there was a lot of making up little things, or tweaking things to fit what was socially appropriate. I know that probably sounds bad, but that's what you have to do, right? And so we all did our interviews, and we took our phone calls, and we did all the different things we had to do to give publicity to the group we were going with, for one thing, because that's something you have to do. You have to give good PR, and then second, obviously, to inform people about what we were going to do and the tasks we were going to be involved in and all these different things. And let me just say, we were being sent out as a whitewater rescue group, so we were actually going to respond as whitewater rescue agents. We had paramedics on our team. We had all the gear to do the whitewater rescue stuff. We had the rafting stuff. We had all that stuff. Wetsuits, vests. We were getting ready for a lot of detox, because when you get into flooded waters, there's a good chance that you're gonna get sewer on you. It was a whole thing, right? So the interviews were pretty intense. The people thought we were gonna go do really, really crazy stuff. But then by the time we got there, well, for one thing, it had been a hurricane. It downgraded while we were driving, and it hit as a superstorm before we even got there. By the time we got there, everything, all the plans had kind of changed, and the group we were working with, which was a offset branch of the Red Cross, had changed to doing shelters, and we were on a completely, they were in New York and we were in New Jersey, and New Jersey, the part we were in was like where it had been hit kind of the hardest, but we were like on the outskirts of that, because basically they keep you back at a certain line, and then when you go in to respond, you go in and you come back out at night to sleep and all that good stuff. So it was kind of this position where like the people that we were supposed to be working with were in a different state, and we were being told to stay out of that state, and we were staying in New Jersey, and we were being told like basically that the job that we were supposed to be doing, which was the whitewater rescue, we wouldn't be able to actually get access to it because of all the flooding. So we decided to go down and talk to like the local enforcement people, which honestly, they weren't very happy to see us. I'm just gonna be upfront and honest. People do not like uninvited people showing up to the staging areas, you know what I mean? But we just showed up and we told them who we were with and what happened, and we explained, you know, we were like, hey, we got the gear, we got the training, we got the experience, blah, and they were pretty much like, no, we just want National Guard. We were basically told to leave the staging area. So we ended up deciding as a group we were going to help with some yard cleanups, we were going to cut down trees, we were going to do those types of things for people, since the initial plan had gotten us skewed and we were no longer doing the whitewater rescue stuff, and we were just going to kind of cross our fingers and hope that somebody ended up calling us and needing us after all, because that's what we were going there for. So we went out and we started doing all the yard work stuff. We partnered with another group of people, and we were, you know, cutting things down with chainsaws and hauling wood away and cleaning up people's yards. And the media were crazy. News stations would like follow us around and take shots of us and make up their own narrative, or they would find one of us and put us in front of the worst looking house and take videos with us. I remember this one time, we were in this area that we just kind of pulled in for the day, and it was pretty far out still, so like the area hadn't been hit that hard, and it was basically just a long stretch of mansions, just mansion, and then there was like one normal house in this row of mansions, and that normal house had been hit pretty hard, and so it was the only house really hit hard on that entire section. But of course there was a news truck there, and of course that news truck took one of us and drug us in front of that one house to take the video clips. Now I understand why they have to do it, because honestly, if one news outlet is reporting, oh, the damage is really, really bad, and they're showing all these disaster photos, what's the other news outlet's gonna do? They can't just be like, oh no, the damage is fine, the damage is normal. No, they have to show similar shots, right? And so they show the worst of the worst shots that they can show, which is the best of the best for them, I guess. But so they would put you in the worst shot, and they'd be like, look at the devastation all around us, and we'd like look around and there were like mansions, but you could only see on the shot the one broken down house. Not to say Superstorm Sandy was not a bad storm, it was, and it did destroy a lot of things, but I'm just saying the media's manipulation of like where we were, because they couldn't get into the really, really bad areas either that were like super flooded and only National Guard was allowed in. So they were taking advantage of any little thing that they could get their hands on, the little vulture claws. So we would do these interviews with them, and they would ask us questions that we couldn't really answer honestly without getting in a lot of trouble. So they would ask us like, isn't this the worst devastation you've ever seen? And we're like, we see this one house that's been very damaged, yes. But then around us we see mansion, and you have to be like, yes, this is the worst damage I've ever seen. Like if you're like, no, not damaged at all, like you're in front of a house that's like really damaged, so you can't, it's crazy, and like you really can't get away from questions like that, because it puts you in a position where you're representing somebody. They ask you questions about who you are, where you're from, what you're doing there, and then on the flip side of that, they start asking you questions about like, oh, the damage, and like tell us about, you know, somebody you helped, or like tell us about somebody you rescued. And so you have to tell these things, and like honestly most of the people we encountered were not at the point when the first interview happened. Not the first interview, but this interview happened, where I was like, wow, these people are schemy vultures. At that point, we'd only really helped one little old lady, and she had like come to see the damage on her vacation rental. She didn't even live there. She lived somewhere else, and she'd flown in to look at the damage to report it to the like insurance companies, and she was devastated that her house was wiped out. And it was really sad, because her house did have like, the garage was glass, and it was like on the ocean, and it had been like swept in, so like there was damage done. It wasn't the worst damage ever, but there was damage, and she was crying because she was like upset about it, and she was like 93. That was the worst thing we'd seen that so far. So that was like, we had to tell them, but we had to like cut out details, and then we had to like, you know, improvise the other details. She'd be like, oh, well, why was the lady crying, you know? And you'd have to be like, oh, because her garage was destroyed, you know? Like, you couldn't be like, oh, because she's a little old lady and she just sees all these trees down. It's just very traumatic for her to come out and see her house and to know the damage that could have been done. And I don't know, it's just very manipulative. So we did a lot of interviews like that where we had to kind of skim around parts of the truth to make sure that we looked good and that we didn't look like total jerks, because you don't want to be the person that's like, nope, damage is fine, there's no damage here. Like, if they put you in front of the one thing that's damaged, you better talk as if everything's that damaged, or you're gonna look literally like the biggest jerk on the whole planet, right? While the storm was bad and we did see a lot of damage, the way that the media handled it was very, like, manipulative. Like, yes, there was damage, but they weren't showing the real damage, and they would kind of manipulate you into saying what they wanted you to say for camera. Like, they're very good with their words, and we weren't really trained in PR, but like, if you're a logical human who knows that you can't look like a total jerk on national television, then you learn how to be like, you know, you know how you have to respond, and they know how you're gonna have to respond, and they're good at it. It kind of in a way felt like this show that we were putting on to make sure that we met the expectations that were expected to be met of us, so we didn't look bad. Because that's what ends up happening, is you look bad, and you don't want that when you're representing a bigger community of people. With all of that being said, I understand why they did it. You know, they have to get in and get the shot. They're trying to compete with other networks. Basically, in my opinion, what I've come to the conclusion of after that experience, because up until then, I hadn't really thought a lot about the media and like news outlets and how they really skew things to like fit their agenda. Like, they only show the devastation in the line of mansions in that area. Like, they could have been like, hey, this is one of the areas that get hit pretty hard. There's the devastated house here. Yes, and that sucks, but look at all these mansions that are completely fine with lots of people who have money who can fix them and full insurance coverage. I mean, like, they could have chosen to report it differently, but demand for that content would have been zero. Like, people don't want to hear that, and people would have been mad about that coverage because other news outlets are covering like all the devastation that's happening, you know what I mean? So they were kind of stuck reporting what they reported, and in doing so, they're kind of stuck manipulating people into saying what they need them to say, and they know that you're gonna say it because you have to say it. So at the end of the day, when there's all these arguments about fake media and this and that, and like how the media is covering this or that, like, we have created that demand and we've created what's happening. It's not 100% fake media. Like, a lot of it is skewed to fit an agenda. Like, why do you think you've got Fox News and you've got like CNN, or you've got, you know, any of those other ones? It's because there are audiences for both, and so they both create only the content those audiences want to see. Do you see them swapping content ever? No, because if they did, people would be mad, the audience that watched them. I don't know. At the end of the day, yes, I think be very cautious of the media. My experience was not great with the media. I was highly perturbed by it, but also know that we are creating the demand for the media. So just like realize that they're just doing their job, which is basically, I kind of think of it as entertainment in a way. Yes, it's supposed to be news, but like, you have to take it with a grain of salt, because it's gonna be the news that people want to see, which is the dramatic news. It's the bad, really bad side of things, or the really good side of things. You know, it's what we're expecting to see, but like the way they want to show it. It also, at the end of the day, is what's going to make them money. What stories are going to make them money? If they make money on it, they'll report on it. So that was my experience with the media. If you would like to subscribe to my channel, you can right here. You can also like this video down below, and you can watch a video that is being suggested to you by YouTube over here, or a video that I just made yesterday over here. And you can also go visit my website over here. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!